can you see this person's perspective,
Right.
but can you see beyond this barrier that is in front of you right now? And we do get to that place of gratitude and actually appreciation. Now, it takes us refusing to stay in a victim mindset in order to do that.
Hey.
Hi there. Long time no see.
Well, I know we have got, y'all, we got a little bit of a techno issue today, but we're going to go on as if we don't have one. We're just going to put this out there on the faith wings because it's a very important subject. How does trauma show up? When trauma comes knocking, we don't always know that that's what it is. And I'm going to just, first of all, ask Teri if she can start uncovering some of the ways that trauma does show up and how we can start identifying it as maybe something that happened to me actually was traumatic.
Okay. So I'm going to bounce on and say also apologies for the crypto lingo because I know it can be irritating. But first, I want to say that trauma in and of itself shows up in 3 different ways. There's acute, there's chronic, and there's complex. Grief also shows up in these ways. Acute trauma is where you had a one-time incident that has traumatized you. It's a consequence of it's the lingering consequence of a deeply disturbing life experience. Okay. And that can be, it can vary from person to person across the board. So acute trauma is a one-time experience that has lingered, has buried in, and continues to surface and represent this disturbing feeling in you. Chronic is going to be when you have had a series of traumatic events that have happened, or a series, I shouldn't say a series, a traumatic event or experience that has happened over and over and over. For instance, growing up with a family member who is an alcoholic and watching them rage or watching them be arrested, or sexual abuse. That is one type of experience that has overlapped over and over repetitively. And then complex is when you have the popcorn of all popcorn traumas, where there's all sorts of experiences that are traumatic. And so trauma falls in those categories for the most part. Now, the question of how it showed up: body fatigue, emotional, mental fatigue, sleep disorders, night terrors, nightmares, flashbacks, clutter, we'll say collectors, clutter, overeating, substance abuse, avoidance, people who will go into avoidance of emotion, avoidance of sensations. The list is long. So that's that in a little nutshell. So take it away, Devon.
Well, we got some people who have joined us. Elizabeth. Hi, Elizabeth. So good to see you. Michelle, it is good to see you here. And Amy starts things off with, I'm so glad you're defining this for us all. Trauma has so many faces. I mean, and I'm going to be honest with you. I subscribe to a lot of, I call it my YouTube therapy, and a new doctor therapist showed up on my YouTube feed this morning as a suggested. And I listened to it and I went, oh my gosh, we've got to talk about this, because she read my mail by reading her own. And I thought we've got to talk about this, because there are a lot of things that we do and we go, why have I all of a sudden developed this trait? Why can't I finish something? Why can't I, I'm the feeling, the word overwhelmed has become part of my lexicon for life now. I am overwhelmed. I have never missed appointments in my life. I've never forgotten appointments in my life. It's just not ever happened to me. And then all of a sudden, in the last few months, I've started forgetting things that were important to me. I mean, it's like, what? And I've had a couple of people that have mentioned to me that I might need to address that. So I'm addressing it, and I'm addressing it with everybody. And I just kind of come out here, and basically these are my own personal therapy sessions with Teri, and I'm just letting you in on them. But there's a long list of ways complex trauma shows up. I can check way too many of those ways. Okay, here we are being rigorously honest about how we show up, what trauma looks like, and how do we start unwinding that little, it's almost like a kudzu vine. It winds around you until you feel trapped. How do we get out of that never ending thing? How do we keep it from sucking us under? Because the trauma's done. We're finished at, we're walked out of it. We're survivors, but how do we move past that? Just surviving.
Well, one, being kind to ourselves, because I hear a lot of people tell me, this is so, you're going to think this is stupid, or this is so dumb, or I feel so stupid, or I'm so frustrated with myself because, or I still shouldn't be feeling this way. All of that is just mud in the water. You're not, because what that does is that sets up a system of self-betrayal, where we say, I want to heal from this trauma, but I feel so stupid because XYZ, XYZ. You want to heal from the trauma, be kind to yourself. Don't put yourself in experiences with other people who are unwell, unhealthy, abusive. Now, sometimes we don't know what that unwell looks like because we've grown up with unwell, so it just looks normal. So you have to do your own self-discovery, listen to yourself, recognize when you're feeling activated or triggered by an experience, and understand that trauma, when our body blocks it out, that's our brain going, yeah, we're just hitting pause on the recorder in our life. And so a lot of times we don't remember things. Now, some people will say, if you want to be whole, healthy, and complete, get that gardening tool out and dig the crap out of it. Dig to the bottom, dig to the bottom. I don't necessarily think that that's always something that you have to do, because sometimes the brain truly does block it out. And I don't care how buried it is in your subconscious, what you'll likely do is start creating a narrative and putting piecemealing things together till it kind of makes sense.
Right.
Well, Uncle Joe molested so-and-so in the family, and then so-and-so was an alcoholic. And then it's like, well, I must have been molested by Uncle Joe because so-and-so was an alcoholic and they didn't take care of her. So you got to be careful not to let your brain fill in the blanks on a narrative. Right? So recognizing it, and also understanding that ultimately trauma responses can show up immediately when you leave your body in order to survive an experience, or it can show up 50 years later when you least expect it.
Wow, you just said something that really sparked something too. When you feel like those things, when it shows up and you feel like you have to leave your body to survive that moment, you have to leave your body. That is an example of, and I've talked to friends and they referred to it as depression, but what I've found that thing where just sleep, you go, I can sleep for 12 hours and never get rest. But that's leaving your body. That's like I'm escaping. There's that escapism with trauma when something triggers it, and we don't always recognize something as a trigger, do we?
You pixelated on me there. What was that question, Devon?
You don't always recognize something as a trigger.
No, no, because if your body if your body has made an imprint of a trauma, you might not immediately recognize it if it crosses the path. But you might, if you start to really listen to your body, you'll feel it in your body. You'll feel it there first. How many times do you have, I mean, I just had this happen to me the other day. I got an email from someone who I haven't heard from them in years, and they were an unwell person in my life. And I did my boundaries, I did my limits, I did everything. And I cut off communication with them. I explained to them what was happening, and then I cut off communication. And just the other day, an email came through. And the minute that I saw the name pop up on my email, I felt that I call, if Jello had an electrical current to it, I felt it run completely through my body. That's a trigger. That's an activation.
Wow.
And so I knew in that moment, my body, I was trying to leave my body because I didn't want to deal with what that was. Now, it turns out there was an apology there, and it was nice, but it not anything that would make me want to open that door and go, come on back in. Let's see how much crazy we can stir up. No, but it's sometimes we're not activated, we're not triggered when we recognize it, and other times it's immediately. You can be triggered or activated, and your mood can shift very quickly. You can become very short or very guarded or very protective. Or you can just start cracking like jokes when they're completely inappropriate.
There's something that when a trauma trigger happens, and we respond with that fear, panic, or that weird electrical feeling that you're talking about, sometimes that releases so much adrenaline, we can become addicted to that feeling, even though it's bad.
Yes. And because that's such an unhealthy attachment to that nervous system response, that's why people get in abusive relationships or toxic relationships where they are truly unwell. I'm not talking about people who argue every once in a while, or it's unwell. It's not a healthy relationship. Mm-hmm. Because that activation, it becomes a drug of choice.
Yes.
And for people who are fixers, yes. And for people who are fixers, caretakers, caregivers, want to make it all right in the world, people, that is probably more addicting than chocolate.
Y'all just settle with that for just a second. Think about that. That's one of those kind of things when I always say that when in session with Teri, she holds very quietly, very gently holds up a mirror, and that was a word that held up a mirror, and really important. I want to just put a pin in this for just a second. Corinne just joined us, just popping in for a hot second. My Benny Penny is now at the Rainbow Bridge. Oh, Corinne, our hearts go out to you. We love you, and so sorry. And so that's hard grief. Hard grief. Yes. Alicia joins us.
Sending you a huge hug.
We love you so much, Corinne, and that's the hardest thing. And you're talking to people that our fur people mean as much to us as any people. So important. Mm-hmm. Alicia is with us and says awareness is a vital key to survival. It is. Elizabeth says my body almost always recognizes triggers before my mind does. It's almost as if my body and mind are completely unrelated sometimes. Ooh, open that one up, Teri.
100%. And that is, we hear people talk about the mind-body connection, and I get tickled because people are like, well, that's just that woo-woo stuff talking about that mind-body connection. There's something to be said for it, because our brain will run amok. Our brain is conditioned. It's a computer. It's conditioned to the keystrokes of the experiences that we have had. So if you have grown up with someone who yells or screams, then your body Morse codes in how you're going to respond. So then when you're out in public and you're older and someone is screaming or yelling at another person, your brain goes, oh, there it is again. And your body feels it, and you're short of breath. You can't breathe. You want to leave the experience. You're done. You can go from having the absolute best enjoyable time you've ever had, finding yourself activated, and then suddenly you're like, I'm out. I'm done. Turn the lights out. I'm going home, going to bed. I'm done. And that's because your nervous system is it has been overloaded. I mean, it has been shut down into survival mode. In order to escape the experience, we energetically escape our body. We check out and we just out. And in those times, you will notice if you are with friends, if you are with a partner, if you are with family members, if you're at a concert or a dinner place or wherever, dog park, wherever you are, and you're going home, you will likely get home, shut the door, be in your safe space, and not even remember how you got home, because you won't remember turning left on whatever road it is. Because your brain is you're in flight mode at that point. It's like, I'm out. And you can't, the brain's primary function at that time is for you, go back to what's called the reptilian brain. It is for you to survive. So we don't pick up all the little, minutia and the little things where it's like, oh, and that guy was selling flowers on the corner and the light was flashing over here and the Walmart was on fire over here. You don't even see it. Your tunnel vision, because your brain is going survive.
Wow. That is huge. That is huge. I don't know. And we've got, everybody is weighing in on this, because I knew this would be one of those kind of subjects that brought a lot of things up for a lot of people. I definitely have seen, Amy says, I definitely have seen how trauma can cause someone to project their stuff on you. Project their stuff on you. Always wanted to know best way to deal with that in the moment if it triggers a fight response in your body. Like if you're dealing with someone who's dealing with trauma, how do you deal with their trauma?
Well, if you are engaging with someone from a professional standpoint, you better make sure your shit's in check. Like, you have to do your own self-work. I see a lot of professionals out there that, they want to be a certain kind of, counselor, coach, therapist, whatever, but they haven't done their work. They're fixers, they're do-gooders, they're caregivers, they're rescuers. But that is a major disservice to try to guide and aid someone in their trauma if you've not done your work first. Now, as human beings, we're going to always have something that's going to flare up or trigger, but we have to be able to recognize that. If you're with a family member or a friend and you're not a professional, you're just there, and you recognize yourself getting in that space of like, I need to get out of here. You can go from, oh, I love you so much, please share whatever you need to share with me. They start sharing, and the next thing you hear in your head is, if they don't shut up, they've got to shut up. I can't do this. You're triggered already. So it's the easiest way, which is not always easy, is to say, I hear you. I want to be here to support you, but right now I don't have the space for that. I don't have the emotional capacity to do this right now. And sometimes if someone is deep in the trigger, they're going to be offended by that. They will be offended. But you have to know that if you're triggered, you cannot help them. If you're triggered, you're basically walking around them with gas fumes all over you, right next to their fire. So you will get gobbled up in their trauma, and it will be a complete, you know what, show. I'm trying to be better. We're dropping my.
Oh my goodness. Elizabeth says, I think my brain protected me from a lot. I literally only have memories of about 30% of my life before the age of 21. Wow. My brain was able to turn off my emotions for many years, so I went through the motions of life without the feelings of life. Oh, that's powerful statement there. The motions of life without the feelings of life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I talked to somebody the other day that said that they just take that. They don't do emotions. They don't do sadness. They don't do anything like that. They just stuff it. They just stuff it as far down as they can. And it's not that our brain is, we don't set out to train our brain to protect us.
Mm-hmm.
Because as human beings, we would not really put ourselves in situations that are dangerous. Think about, let's go back to the caveman days, right? A caveman is not going to walk up to a dinosaur that's however much bigger than it and you know, boogly and try to piss it off. Like, it's not going to do that. That would be ridiculous. That's a death sentence. Our fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, they kick in when our nervous system and our adrenals are overloaded. They're triggered and they're overloaded. And then we're like, I'm in danger. And this can happen when you're a newborn baby. It can happen, you know, when you are 3 months old. And we don't remember those things because our brains not even tracking at that point. Like, you know, so we're not going to remember them. So if you have trauma from childhood, especially before the age of 9, 10, you're probably not going to remember that, in part because you're at least 8 before you start what I call weaving our memories together. You know, you can remember at 5, you can remember at 3, 4, and 5 who people are. You can remember who friends are. And by 5, 6, you're putting together like, yeah, I had a party at school and so came and we did this. So you're weaving that. And by 8, 9, 10, you have a long term where you're weaving more together. But as an adult, you can go back to like, what was I thinking at 10 years old? And you won't remember. You won't remember because our brain is constantly, think of your brain like a conveyor belt. Like, have you ever seen that the I Love Lucy episode where they're in the candy
chocolate
thing, conveyor belt? Or, it's going down. That is memories, good, bad, traumatic, on our conveyor belt in our brain. And all the ones that we're stuffing are the ones that never get processed and they stay with us. The other ones just sort of go off and they're just gone. They're just gone. And so you can have a avalanche of activation if you're not careful, because a lot of people don't even know what triggers them. They don't know.
Wow.
I've worked with people who ran the Boston Marathon when the bombing happened. I've worked with people who were near the trade towers when they went down. I've worked with people from school shootings. And some of those folks don't even recognize that. When I had one person tell me one time they went on a vacation, they stayed at a hotel near an airport. They didn't recognize that they were over the takeoff or the landing runway. And so the entire vacation they were on pins and needles. And part of that was because they didn't recognize that those planes coming in to land were actually triggering their 9/11 experience, because it was so loud and the planes were so low. They didn't recognize that. And it wasn't until years later they were working through this stuff, and they were like, I just don't understand why this always happens. And then it was, to see it on their face was like, oh, they got it. It was like, this is what this is.
Absolutely.
But their brain, go ahead.
I mean, that is, our brain does all these little tricks to try to protect us, to try to solve the problem that we are not willing to solve for ourselves. Jackie says, I had to back away from all the gaslighting peeps because it's my mental health. Horses do this. They see something and they just quietly back away and go somewhere else. I will say, Jackie, horses will run like the wind away from something that scares them too. And they will back up. I mean, I've ever been one and see like a big turkey up in a tree, and they don't know what that is, but it's like something big and it's in a tree and it's going to kill them. I mean, it could be a rock or a paper bag in the middle of a trail. They back away from anything that scares them. And sometimes it's quiet, and sometimes they'll leave you sitting there and they go back to the barn. They're very demonstrative about getting away from something that scares them. We are not so demonstrative. We will stay with something that scares us because we feel like we are obligated to help someone. Amy says, I've learned a lot to walk away when I feel my body there with a family member, to find my safe place inside me. And man, Amy, that's huge that you've gotten to that place, because a lot of people don't have a safe place inside them. That's what we're trying to do with this show, is to find the safe place inside you. Jacqueline says, also, if you need to prioritize your health. That was hard to learn, because some folks will make you their healer. And then if you choose you, they get mad, and then the cycle continues, or gaslighting. So care for yourself, prioritize yourself. It's never selfish. It's responsible. Just sharing my experience, because it's a hard thing to shift into if you're the go-to fixer for all things. Not codependent, but sometimes people make you the fixer when that's not your choice. Choose you. And by the way, Jackie is part of a new best-selling book, by the way, that just came out. And you can go to her page and see it, because she is fantastic at what she talks about.
Lovely, lovely. Yeah, I tell you, I've got a sign in my office. Well, it used to be in my office. It's not there anymore. I write on the board often that says, love you more. And people will say, oh, that's so sweet. Well, I love you too. I'm like, well, that's real sweet. But this doesn't mean I love you more. It means love you more. You. If you're reading it, love you more. Look into that place, just like she's talking about. Prioritize yourself. Choose yourself. Like Amy said, find that safe space. Sometimes when you're raised with trauma becomes so complex that it doesn't feel like there's a safe place. Because It's like, well, if I go to this place that's safe, well, then there's this person I have to contend with. And if I go to this safe place in my head, then there's this person I have to contend with. If I go over here, well, then there's this wreck or this fire or this use or this whatever. And before you know it, that trauma will have you projecting fear and creating more triggering moments before they're not even triggering moments, but you will create a trigger because your body is expecting that cycle.
Right. All right. Elizabeth says, amen, Jackie. We have to take care of ourselves. We deserve to take care of ourselves. And we've got a big love from Jackie on that. And says, great healing topics, much needed. You're doing great work here. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, today. We're going to put a pin in this, and maybe we'll continue trauma talk next week, because we're going into the trauma season.
I just started to say, going into the trauma season. We're going into the season of expectations and obligations from family members, from friends. We're going into seasons where people have had family members and pets transition and they're no longer with us. We're going into places where a client said something the other day, and we were talking about they were talking about the holidays and how that shows up for them. And a little while later, there was a post on Instagram, and they sent it to me, and it said, "Doing your therapy from your childhood home is like reporting the crime from the scene of the crime."
Yeah. Whew.
You know,
that's a lot.
And that's a lot. That's a lot. There's a lot of family dynamics, and not all. I mean, and don't get me wrong. We'll get into this next week too, but there's a lot of family dynamics that don't have to be ground jarring traumas. You can be walking in and having someone go, "Oh, you're wearing that again? Oh, well, I didn't, I knew that relationship wouldn't last," or whatever it is. There's a lot of things like that come off as backhanded or slightful things, but depending on where your heart space is and how much you feel like you need to protect yourself from people who are supposed to love you, you will find yourself activated or triggered, and you will find yourself often re-traumatized unintentionally, but nevertheless re-traumatized. And recognizing how that shows up first and foremost in your body is a game changer, because the minute that you recognize that you're trying to leave your body, which most of the time that's one of your littles in there going, "Peace out, I'm not doing this again." And so they bolt and they take your energy with you. So you're just standing there going, okay. Some people will leave with their little, they'll leave the space. Other people will stand there, like Jackie and Elizabeth and Amy have said today, and they just take the experience back in again. And you have to be willing to step away. And sometimes it feels like if you step away from those unhealthy people, you're going to be alone. But I can assure you that brief moment of loneliness and isolation that you have is worth your peace of mind. And you will not be lonely or isolated forever, but you have to choose healthy, and you have to be accountable with your choices.
So much good stuff. Well, if you need to reach out to me, devonoday@gmail.com. If you want to reach out to Teri, I'm just going to turn this over to her. We're here each and every week on Wednesdays. This is Launch Date. Yes,
we are. And if you need to reach out to me, you can find me here on Facebook. I'm also on Instagram. I'm like a cockroach. I'm everywhere. So just, plug in terrypugh.com and you'll find me. And we do appreciate each and every one of you showing up and sharing yourself and your thoughts and your energy with us. And to Corinne, super quick, I don't know if she's still with us or not, and I understand if she's not. Dana and I are working on the store now for the shirt. So they are making their way to the light. So they will be here soon. And between now and when we see all of your beautiful names, because we don't get to see your faces on here, we see your beautiful names pop up next week. Please take a moment, check in with yourself to love you more and to increase your peace. See ya.